Hi, my name is Dorian, and this is You, Me, and the Industry. A podcast where I get to hang out with people from the games industry and talk with them about their job, the industry, and a bunch of other stuff. On this episode, I'm joined by AJ Grand-Scrutton of Dlala Studios. Not only is he the founder and CEO of the company, but also the creative director/writer on the upcoming Disney Illusioned Island game, and he's the director of Battletoads 2020. We discuss what it was like growing a studio from a 6 people to a 35 people team, how the studio got the gamesindustry.biz award for best places to work in the UK, and how the loss of a $3 million deal with Disney might have been a blessing in disguise. Furthermore, we get into design decisions behind making great co-op games, what keeps AJ up at night, and with AJ being a Disney expert, I just had to ask about Goofy wearing pants while Pluto isn't. Here's also a quick PSA about the episode. I didn't realize it at the time, but I recorded this episode while having COVID. So if I seem a bit more frazzled than usual, that's the reason for it. Please enjoy. Hello everyone and welcome to the show. Today I have the huge pleasure to welcome AJ Grand-Scrutton to the show. AJ is the founder of Dlala Studios, which is best known for bringing back Battletoads in 2020. They recently announced Disney's Illusion Island, which is based on the trailer, seems to be another great and promising co-op game. Dlala Studios also won the gamesindustry.biz award in 2022 for best places to work, and AJ even was named UK's best boss. So AJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
How are you doing these days?
Yeah, great, thank you. Great, busy as you can imagine, but it's lovely to get to do things like this and come and have a chat with you.
Right, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's it's always quite, everyone is busy these days, and I think like with the pandemic, hopefully like coming closer and closer to an end, or just reaching an acceptable level for everyone to just be themselves or maintain like the usually work schedule again. I think things are picking up again, and now people are now going out more, having events, and I think all this like Gamescom just happened a while ago, and I guess it feels a little bit more normal these days, if we can call it, with all the things going on in the world right now. At least this area is a little bit more normal.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the new normal. I think kind of right. What we're seeing is probably the new bar for normal, right?
Exactly. I hope the news cycle becomes a little bit less normal these days. If this is now the standard of like normal, I will just I will have a little bit of unnormal in like something a little bit different from time to time.
Yes, definitely.
But only good vibes here, of course, with the podcast. So we will try to keep it upbeat. And like we usually do here at You, Me, and the Industry, we kick off the show with a guest topic. And you already teased before we started the conversation, two very, very interesting topics. And I can't resist, of course, because you were mentioning and you were showing me your beautiful, beautiful puck named Hugo.
Yes.
And let's just kick it off with that. So how's the life of being like blessed with a puck in your life?
Here he is. He will be snoring throughout this podcast, so don't take it personally. He can be wide awake, and the second he hears me doing a business call, he will jump on my lap, go to sleep, and snore next to the microphone.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean he's wonderful. He's 6 years old now. He's just under 6.5, but he's been coming to the studio since he was born. So obviously we got him at like 8 weeks, and then I stayed home with him until he had his vaccinations. But then as soon as he was vaccinated, he, when he fit in the palm of my hand, he's been coming into the studio every day. So like this is his second home. Like he loves it here. He knows how to get here, and it's just great. It's just wonderful having him around the office. Like, he'll come up here with me for a little bit in my office, and then he'll go down and hang out with the team. And besides the fact, obviously, it's lovely for me, I think it's nice for the team as well, because it can be a good distraction. Like, they'll take time to play with him or stroke him, and it just gives them something to do away from the screen. So, yes, I love him to bits, and it's wonderful having him. He is as big a part of Dlala as anything, so...
Are there any surprises there? Like, is there any, like, a particular spot where you didn't expect him to be all the time? Is there, like, a certain favorite place where you're like, I didn't expect that to be like right around this corner all the time?
So he's always, whilst he shouldn't have favourites, Ben, our tech director, and Mark, our IT director, who are two of my best friends as well, he absolutely adores them. So he is with them all the time. So like, if he's not with me up here, he'll normally be downstairs hanging around with them, playing with them. But he just goes wherever he wants. He does whatever he wants to do. He goes wherever he wants. Quite often, I mean, the other day, we turned around and he was standing on top of the boardroom table. He got on top of the conference table and was just walking around on the conference table.
Right.
Yeah, he literally does whatever he wants.
So was he any help in making like the tough decisions?
Oh, he is the chief dog officer, so he's the one who makes the cuts. He's the one who drops the features.
Right.
No, he's just lovely. It's just lovely to have him, falling asleep on my lap like he is at the moment. And, it can be quite stressful at times, but it's hard to be that stressed when you've got like a little furry loaf of bread on your lap the whole day. So
right. Yeah. And maybe it's a great segue. Was he ever part of your band training? Because you mentioned that you and a couple of Dlala members, I guess, ages ago already started a band. And was he ever part of that, like doing band practice?
So when the band was active, so the band started and finished before Hugo was born. Yeah. But the band was my pre-Hugo life. So that was myself and our lead designer, Grant, and our composer Dave as well, on and off, was part of the band. But yeah, we're in a pop punk band called Who's Driving Bears Driving, and yeah, we did the whole active touring thing. We got an old school minibus and we used to tour around the country. And we always say though, it was a wonderful way to spend our 20s, but you couldn't pay me to do it now. Like sleeping on strangers' kitchen floors and in the back of a minibus on an old rugged mattress.
Right.
But we have actually started playing together again. So we've started like rehearsing, but with no intention to do anything. It's more just an excuse for like the six of us to get back together, and especially for Grant and I, it's good for us to have something in our lives that isn't directly related to work. Right,
yeah. But I mean, it kind of feels like cheating if you have the composer with you. I mean, it's like next level, right? I mean, if you have like a proper composer like there with you.
Look, we did pop punk. There wasn't a lot to it,
Okay.
The stuff that Dave does is very intricate and beautiful, and I think,
right.
He spent his life in pop punk bands as well, so I think, his talents were definitely wasted there.
Right, yeah. That's awesome, yeah. Yeah. And yeah, maybe Hugo will make an appearance on the next album. If you ever happen to release it, maybe there will be a little snoring sound or something, a sample. Maybe
you never
make
know.
Its way in there.
I've got a feeling Sam, our lead audio designer, has recorded Hugo. So I think some of the creatures you'll see in Illusion Island have probably got some Hugo snoring sounds in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and speaking about Illusion Island, there was a game we recently announced during this Disney panel, and just maybe talk me through it. Like, what was it like? Because I was just like tuning in, just didn't really expect much, and then it was quite funny because I actually saw like Blessing Adeoye Jr. from Kinda Funny there, and I was like, oh, crazy! I didn't expect that they had really a proper like moderator and stuff. It was just like I was just expecting a trailer show, but then I was just like, wait a second, this game looks kind of familiar. And then I was like, I saw Dlala Studios. I'm just like, wait a second, like this is the guy I'm going to, or this is the team I'm going to, or the dude I'm going to interview. And I was just like, wow, interesting. It's so cool that you had like this like whole showcase for your game, and it's quite a big get. So congrats to that.
Well, thank you.
So like, what was it like getting like this sort of, like getting everything ready for this trailer? Was there like a lot of hype build up inside the studio for like revealing this the new game of yours?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's the scariest thing for anyone who works in this industry is, especially when you're doing something with an IP like Mickey, right? You don't get to talk about it, right? Like it's
exactly, yeah.
So you're just tucked away. You don't know how it's going to be received. So yeah, we were really excited. When we found out we were going to be at D23, we were over the moon. In terms of like the trailer, it was an intense period to get the trailer together. Like, poor old marketing at Disney. You know, they're all very
Right.
lovely, but I can be very, very demanding. So, like, I was very much every single little nook and cranny I was picking at. But what was really nice is that most of the team didn't see the trailer until that event. So,
Oh, wow, okay.
only about 5 of us had seen it because I deliberately didn't show the team. So, at D23, there was myself, Ben, our tech director, Mark, our IT director, Jem, our operations director, Dave, the composer. And besides that, all the team was back here and we did like a little party. So we got like a cocktail bar for them in the office and we got pizza and they all went in the screening room. And like, so when it came on the stream, that was the first time they'd seen the trailer. So I've got this lovely cell phone footage that someone sent me of like the room just erupting when the trailer started.
Nice.
So yeah, it was really great. You know, there's not many times in your life you get to be at D23 announcing your new Mickey Mouse game. So it's kind of, you know, it's, you know, once in a lifetime stuff.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, also, it's quite an honor because there aren't that many out. I think the last one was Epic Mickey, I guess, from Warren Spector.
Yeah, I think Epic Mickey 2 was the last big one. Obviously, there was the Castle of Illusion remake,
stuff.
And yeah, obviously Kingdom Hearts, you know, the stuff that the Square Enix stuff they feature on. But yeah, this is the first dedicated Mickey title in a long while, and it's the first Mickey. I think it's the first title where you can play as all 4, like Mickey, Minnie, Donald, and Goofy.
Right, yeah. And I mean, it's also quite the jump. I don't want to diminish, you know, like the sort of like the brand awareness of Battletoads, but I mean, Mickey Mouse is kind of like everyone knows Mickey Mouse, right? I mean, if I ask my mom about Mickey Mouse, she knows it for sure. But if I ask about Battletoads, not very likely. But it's just like, wow, like what a big get. It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. And look, we're super proud of Battletoads. Absolutely adore the game. But yeah, I mean, this is, you know, Battletoads is an incredible IP, but it's Mickey, right? It's Mickey, Minnie, Donald, and Goofy. There are not many characters more famous than these 4.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah, I mean, you were just talking about the trailer. So like what I always talk, I think in the previous episodes, I talked with one of the Respawn environment designers about, you know, creating something for Disney themselves, like Star Wars, and that they had like a lot of like people there coming over, like the Disney people, telling them, okay, no, you can't do it like this. It has to be like this. And I mean, this was like Star Wars is still, in my opinion, adjacent to, you know, Disney themselves. It's, I mean, so of course now part of Disney, but I mean, to me, it's still like not as Disney as you think proper Mickey Mouse. So I think they would be even more protective of the Mickey Mouse IP. So like, were there any like really like stern looks at you where you were like, you know, we want to design them like this, and then you were like, no, listen to me. It can only be this way, and it can only be this way. Like, I imagine there had to be a lot of back and forth between like the design team and like maybe your ideas or something.
Look, I would love to tell you it has, but this has been easy in terms of that side of things. Okay. I mean, our art director Lucy designed our versions of the Fab Four. Okay. And yeah, I mean, I think when we officially submitted them, we had one note in total. We got one note, and then we actioned that. And yeah, it has been great. It's been this big, open, collaborative experience. And I think I said this the other day. Like, the thing is, we love Mickey. Like, we're Mickey fans making a Mickey game, and what that means is we respect the characters and like we respect who they are, what they can do. So. It was actually a pretty painless process, to be honest. Okay. In terms of the pinch points on the trailer, it was never about the creative. It was always more about like, I wanted to use this shot. The marketing team wanted to use a different shot. Like, it was never like an issue with the core creative. It was always just me being me, to be honest.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy because like there are like these really tough restrictions usually, but it's great that it didn't work out for you. I always imagine that's being like, you know, if you ask me, I always imagine like these like big lawyers and the suits coming over, and then you're just like, maybe Mickey jumps like this, and they're like, no.
So
Mickey Mouse can't jump like this.
I imagine there would have been difficult conversations if we had caused them, like. Because we know the Mickey brand so well, like I am like a lifelong Mickey fan because we know it so well. I think we almost went in with knowing some of the boundaries natively, and then I I've pushed on stuff, like some of the narrative stuff is pushing Mickey to a whole new place he's not really been before. That's awesome, yeah. But yeah, like, you know, we haven't tried to break the characters. We've just tried to be what is the most appropriate version of these characters for our game, and then push that to the limit. And because we have such an open dialogue with Disney, like, we've not had any big clashes or any massive arguments. I mean, you know, the biggest conversation we've had, and you can probably imagine this, is you know, we've put Minnie in a jumpsuit with flats on, and traditionally Minnie is the pink polka dot dress with the heels, right? So, like,
exactly, yeah.
That was one of the longest parts of the conversation, but it was never, it was never an argument. It was always just like, okay, like, what is the motivation for this? Why are we doing this? And I think that's a big thing when you work with Disney, and I think they'd say this themselves, and they've really trained us to think about the journey, because on, you know, when we're making games, we have a finite amount of time, so it's very easy for us to go, oh yeah, that first version, I love that first version, let's do that. And what Disney have really encouraged us to do is like, hey, look, even if you love the first version, let's get a couple more versions done to make sure it's the best one. Like, let's go on a journey to make sure that we've got the right thing, not the first thing. And that's been really useful. I mean, that's made us grow as a studio, but it also meant that, like, the way we approached everything was a lot more thought out.
Right, yeah. And I guess, yeah, what an amazing time to be alive. You know, back in the day, when you said, like, you know, I've been a lifelong Mickey fan, now people would look at you strangely, but now you're like, you look at you, like, living the dream, being a fan and getting to work on this. And, yeah, I mean, and maybe to follow up on that, so, like, I guess, and you were also writing part of the, like, I think you were also writing the dialogue and stuff, so are there any certain things, because, like, I know, like, by doing research on you, I heard that you're a big fan of Gravity Falls, and I'm not quite sure if you've seen that, the Alex Hirsch lawyer stuff. Have you ever seen that on Twitter?
Yeah.
Where he sort of get, like, the notes back, where they were like, okay, they can't imply that these characters are in a relationship, like, they can't, like, this joke is offensive to them, and so it sounds like, I'm not quite sure, was it even Disney back then? I'm not quite sure who even made it, and I was just, like, imagining that, like, conversation-wise or, like, dialogue-wise, they might be a little bit tougher, but I guess from what I can tell, like, this was also not an issue for you, right?
Yeah, no, not at all, because, look, I think if we tried to do really out-of-character things, I think it would have been different, right? Like, with Gravity Falls, it was a new world, right? He was doing a lot of stuff with that world that wasn't necessarily something you do with Mickey and Co, because that's Alex's world, it's his creation, so it's made it. With us, we kind of knew things, right? Like, you know, we knew that how Mickey and Minnie interacted, we knew that Donald was cantankerous and a bit grumpy, but he still loved his friends. We know that Goofy's a bit of a, you know, he can be a bit silly at times, but it was just about being respectful to the characters, and I think, you know, getting to work with Christopher Painter, who's a writer at Disney Interactive, and he's also done a lot of TV stuff. He really helped me early on find the tone of the characters, because you kind of just write. Like, just, when you start writing, especially for this, you kind of, all those years and years and decades of watching Mickey, I kind of, like, digested that and tried to write, and then it's all the subtle things, like, oh, Minnie wouldn't say that like this because of this, or like, hey, you know, Donald can only say certain words because of how his voice is used, so try to avoid this stuff. And you know, you kind of learn that bits quickly. But, you know, we're making a game that is like, it's not a kid's game, but it's kid friendly. So we're not trying to do risque storylines. We've got some silly, cheeky jokes in there. We've got some of the fourth wall breaking stuff that I did on Battletoads that I love. But we haven't really tried to push anything that would have probably have got us into that position to have those kind of notes.
And I mean, since you are an expert on Mickey, and I mean, now I guess the only game I'm currently aware of that is in development related to Mickey Mouse is, like, I mean, maybe you can answer me that. So what's, like, the deal with, like, the Pluto and Goofy thing? Like, I mean, they're both dogs, right? I mean, did you ever ask that? We're like, if you ever add, like, Pluto, like, why is, like, the no, like, why is he wearing pants? And
it's a mighty fine question, and as much as I'd like to think I'm a walking tome of Mickey and Friends knowledge, I don't think even I have got into that temple of knowledge yet. Yeah, it's a good question. It is a mighty good question. You know, why are Chip and Dale sometimes anthropomorphic and sometimes they're actual chipmunks who can't talk.
That's true, right?
I think it's one of those questions lost to time.
I mean, they actually explained it in the movie, the recent movie. They explained that. So, maybe we'll see Hugo maybe in shorts next time. Like, you never know what happens to these dogs here.
You never know.
Exactly, yeah. And maybe let's talk about the timeline, because like I mentioned before, like, you were previously working on the Battletoads game, and then you released the game, and it was great success for the studio. And like could you imagine you have done like the game you're working on now with the Micky Mouse game right now without getting the experience from the Battletoads? Because I would assume, because there are a lot of lessons learned here or there that you gain from Battletoads. So was there anything like you're really fond of? It's like, glad we first got to do Battletoads, and now we get to do this.
Oh, we could never have made this game if we hadn't made Battletoads. Like,
right,
0% chance we could have made this game. We did a lot of great stuff on Battletoads. If you look at the positives, we really merged well as a team, because when we signed Battletoads, we were only 11 people in 2018, right. And there's 35 of us full time now. But we merged as a team. We really refined our 2D animation style, the pipelines. Battletoads was the first time where we did the TV quality cutscenes with professional VO, which is kind of becoming our thing now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it's the bad stuff that really taught us. Like, I really mucked up the end of that project. Like, we had to redo a massive chunk of Battletoads right at the end. Like, we probably did like 70% of the work in the last 4.5 months, because we had to go back and redo things. Obviously, the pandemic hit, which affected lots of people. But the pandemic hit just as we were going into test for certification. And we were making a same room local co-op experience. So that, and we hadn't heard of like Parsec. So we didn't know about Parsec until this project. So, that was a nightmare for testing. Yeah, like...
Can you maybe elaborate on the Parsec thing? For maybe people don't know.
Yeah, sorry. So Parsec is just a piece of software. I've got no endorsements by them. It's just a piece of software that lets you... Effectively, it's like a fancy screen share, but with a really minimum amount of input lag. So it allows you to play same room games across the internet. So for Battletoads, which was free player only, in the same room, it would have been really great, because then we could have played it across Parsec to test it.
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, the way I handled the scope of Battletoads was wrong. The way I kind of... Yeah, and while we didn't do crunch, we did extra hours. There were extra evenings, extra odd days, and it wasn't ideal. And it just taught us a lot. And I think it really showed at the end of pre-production on Illusion Island, because I was able to make big cuts. Like, we were able to go, hey, we've answered the big questions. We know what the game is. This is how long these things are going to take, but this is how long we've got to make it. And so...
Right.
On Battletoads, I kind of would have been like, we'll figure it out. Let's just get going. But on this one, my production staff really pushed me, and we're really like, no, we need to make these. And we just made the big cuts early.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's coming in comfortable, because it never comes in comfortable, right? But it's a much smoother process this time around. The game is better. The game is more cohesive. Yeah, we just learned a lot making Battletoads. And we had some staff, one of our programmers called Luke. He only had about a year or so's experience when he joined us. He did a great job on Battletoads, but he has absolutely leapt forward on Illusion Island. He's just done absolutely fantastic work, and I think, not meant offensively, but it shocked myself and the tech director, like, how much he has jumped forward. And we've kind of seen that across the board. We've had, I think, since Battletoads, we've had 4 or 5 internal promotions into senior or lead roles, which is massive, because we're still a small studio. So yeah, I mean, I think we learnt a lot. We say we've got BTSD, we've got Battletoads stress disorder. So there's, those little conversations would happen early on in Illusion Island, and we'd be like, oh, okay, let's shake this off and let's figure out a better way to do this.
Right. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you said, you're like still a small studio, and I have a couple of like management related questions, because I think those are very interesting for a person in your position. So like, let's just talk about like things like dealing with money. So yeah, like running a small studio, I would just assume involves, a lot of like juggling money, handing out fair salaries, buying equipment, renting the office, like, and then also having like a little bit of like a, a backup in case a deal doesn't go through or something. How did you learn these things, and can you be really prepared for any of these things, or is it mostly like learning by doing for you?
Absolutely great question. Well, look, let's start in reverse, where we're at now. So my operations director, Gemma, she really handles the money now because she's a grown-up. So, she knows what she's doing. She's very professional. She handles it very maturely. So, she really, her role's operations director, but she's arguably like a COO, CFO combination. Mm-hmm. In the early days, I handled the money and I handled it badly. So we were fine. But when Gemma joined, she joined as producer. And one day she said to me, "Oh, so what's the project budget?" And I said, "Oh, well, we have this much money coming in." And she went, "Yeah, but what's the budget for the project?" And I went, And I had a spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet had 2 columns. It had money in, money out. And that was it. That was all the spreadsheet said. And it didn't matter if we had multiple projects on. It all went into one pot. And at that point, Gemma was very much like, "No, the project has an amount of money coming in. We need a budget for the project." And in the end, she just took it all over. So we have quite a complicated setup nowadays in terms of like our spreadsheets. We have multiple projection spreadsheets and analysis, and we have to figure out, like, okay, we need the next project to come in by this date, and it needs to be this much money. But a lot of it has been learned by mistakes. Like, as organised as Gemma is, and as great as with numbers as she is, we have hard lessons. We've had project cancellations. We've had staff shortages. We've had contractors we've had to bring in that should have been short-term but ended up long-term. And that takes a hit on your budget. So, yeah, I think we could be better prepared. Like, I think it would be great if people were taught more of this stuff early on, like at school, college, university, and understanding of this stuff. But a lot of it we definitely had to learn, by setting ourselves on fire.
And have you had any, I know you love to read about a couple of these management books, for example, like the one from Bob Iger or Ed Catmull, or I think Mark Randolph, is one of those you mentioned. Do any of these books involve some of the lessons you just mentioned, where you were like, okay, or do you know a book that mentions like a lot of these lessons you just mentioned, and you were like, oh, I wish I had read that book before I went through it myself?
I mean, those books are incredible. They're awesome. I think that, for me, those books came to me at the right time in my life and career. Like, every time I read one of those books, I felt like I could digest what I had learned through my mistakes and apply it through the lens that these guys had applied it through. But I think that when I was starting the studio, the thing I wish I had is the Double Fine documentary. So the documentary that followed Double Fine when they did Broken Age after the Kickstarter. I mean, that is... I don't think we'll ever get a documentary that good again for games. I just don't think. And I love No Clip. I think all the No Clip stuff is brilliant. But that Double Fine documentary covers every stage, all these ups and downs. And obviously it's hours of content. Like, I probably watch that full thing 3 times a year at least. If I'm going through a rough patch, or like I'm trying to get heads down at a weekend, I start watching it. But that, I think if I'd seen that early on, it might have scared me off, to be honest. But like... Yeah. It's so real. Like, watching it now, I can just relate to every beat that happens in there. Every conversation, you're like, this is just like when we had to speak about this or speak about that. So I would always recommend those books you brought up, always. I'd also recommend Masters of Doom, about, the id Software guys. But that Double Fine documentary, to me, like, that is the one where I'm like, this is what it's like. This is running a small studio.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Lifeformed, which was on the previous episode, for basically ruining every music I can now listen to while reading something game development related, like a new Jason Schreier book or something. Totally ruined it, because like now I read the words and then I feel like something is missing. I now need like the Double Fine documentary soundtrack to
that soundtrack is incredible. Yeah, Lifeformed did an incredible job on that. It's so good.
Yeah. And maybe to dial a little bit back, when you just started, I think you mentioned like we were six guys in a garage with no money, and like, how do you sort of grow responsibility without feeling overwhelmed? Because like now you say like, okay, now we have like a 35 people studio, and we got contractors, and we had like at one point a very big deal from like a $3 million deal at one point, and so like, how do you not get overwhelmed? You're just like, well, I'm just a pug lover with a garage. Like, how am I suddenly the boss of like 35 people who sort of, I don't want to sound too over dramatic, but I mean, whose sort of life depends on me, like, you know, the income in sense. Yeah, it's like, how do you, like, is there anything do you do that helps you not get overwhelmed, or it's more like, you know, I have trust in my abilities?
Oh, I'm overwhelmed every second of every day. I am overwhelmed every second of every day. I will repeatedly lose sleep over the fact that, as much as no one would ever say this, it's up to me if people pay their mortgages and feed their kids. Like, that's how I view it. Like, and it was less of an issue in the old days when it was 2 and then 6 of us, because there weren't mortgages, there weren't kids, you know. Right. But there is mortgages and kids, and some of those guys who were in the garage are still here and have mortgages and and have kids. So I'm overwhelmed every second of every day. None of it comes down to a faith in my own abilities. It comes down to a 0% doubt faith in the team. So the way I always tell the team is this, and this is 100% the truth. I know, and I don't want to sound like Molyneux, I know I can go into a pitch and I can pitch something, and at that moment in time, I might not know how I'm going to do it, but I know the team will do it. Like, I've never for 1 second in my career of running Dlala ever doubted the team could do something, and not once has the team ever let me down. So that's what keeps me going. That is, when I have to do pitch after pitch meeting, or if I'm pitching a massive concept and we haven't even started it, I'm never scared that I'm selling snake oil, because I'm not. What I'm selling is the promise. I'm selling to these publishers and these partners, we're going to make you something awesome. This is the spark of the idea of something awesome, but when it gets in the hand of my team, it's going to blow your mind. And I know that every time I go into those meetings, I'm telling the truth. So that's what keeps me going. I don't want to let the team down, and I 100% have faith they'll do it. But yeah, do not be fooled for not a single second passes that I'm not overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I think it's just sort of my takeaway right now from you being this candid. I think like you like I said, you won the best boss in UK from gamesindustry.biz, and Dlala was like one of the great places to work. Like, yeah, like, how did you get there? Like, was there a distinct sort of like, it was just like you applying, like, you know, the things you learned from maybe these books, or the things you would like to have working at a studio? Like, how did it happen? Because I actually think your employees voted on that survey, I guess.
Yeah, yes, they did. Yeah, so the way that the Best Places to Work awards work is you're given a survey to fill out about the studio yourself as studio owners, and you fill out a load of information, but then the surveys go to your team, and your team have to answer questions about how they feel about the studio, their work environment, how they, etc., etc. And then they also get a chance to nominate you as the best boss and give a reason. I mean, let's talk about the best places to work bit, because the best boss bit is, I don't want to sound egotistic, and there's no way to have that conversation without it. So, yeah, we are as good as we are because of the team. So we have 100% transparent and open environment here, right? And and everyone on this team knows that they can come up, they can ring me, they can knock on my door, they can message me anytime they need me. And what's also great is that the Dlala we are today is not the Dlala we were in 2012 or 2015 or 2016. We're shaped by the people here, and the team will tell us when we're not doing stuff that we need to be doing. Like, the great thing we do is when you do that Best Places to Work, you get a high-level survey that tells you information. And a few years back, the team were really happy with everything, but they didn't feel we were doing enough to support the industry. So that's why I signed up and started doing mentorship programs, and we started taking on apprentices, and, you know, and the team mentioned, like, hey, you know, we done this odd charity thing, but it'd be great if we could do a little bit more for charity. So that's why we started, each year we do like charity runs where we donate to cancer research, and at Christmas we'll pick a charity and donate money. So the team are making us better, and it's not because we're not going, oh crap, if we want to win this award, we have to do this thing. It's because the team are saying, look, we love it here, we were very happy being here, but if you really want to be better as a studio, can you do this stuff? So the team make us better. And this, like, honestly, like, taking the fact I own it and I work here, like, it's such a wonderful place to work. Like, the team are so wonderful. Like, I deal with no politics. Like, we must have in 10 years had less than 5 HR problem meetings. Like, our staff retention is insane. Obviously, like, It's our 10th year now. We've got 2 people this year who celebrate their 10 years. We've got a load of 8 years, 7 years. Our average retention is like 3.5 years, which doesn't sound a lot until you take into account we've doubled in size in like the last 14 months. So you've got a load of people who have only been here a year, like, and we've got people that return. So obviously my co-founder Craig left and then came back. We've had other people leave and come back. The team are just so wonderful to work with. They all give it their all. Like I've never worked with a group of people who they don't just want themselves to do well. They don't just want the project to do well. They want the team to do well, the studio to do well. And it's hard to lose when you've got that. When you've got a talented bunch of people who want each other to succeed without stepping on throats, like, you automatically create this great environment.
Right, yeah.
And so, yeah, like, I would love to take all the credit. And a lot of credit needs to go to, like, Gemma for how she set up the studio and the strategy team for how they helped me run the team. But it is the team. Like, the team make this one of the best places to work in the country.
Yeah, and maybe from your point of view, like, how do you see it go wrong in other places? Like, I mean, you know, the industry is quite, I don't want to sound too negative, you know, but I mean, there are a couple of like big news articles, you know, who came out about like big companies, big studios, and a lot of people, you know, besides Crunch, talking about sexual harassment and all this stuff. Like, and I would just assume, you know, like every person who starts a company, you know, has the best intentions in their mind. So like how do you, like, where do you see it go wrong when it comes to Crunch, or when it comes to like all these like sort of, I guess, like power hierarchy issues or something? Like, aren't there any sort of safety lines in place, or are people, I mean, getting too high on their, you know, like successes and their riches or something? Like, can you see a sort of like reasoning for that?
Oh, it's... So, look, there's no excuse for the mistreatment of anyone. Let's get that out of the way first, right? There is no excuse for abusive environments at all. But what I will say is about when it goes wrong, like, in other ways, it's so easy to happen. Like, when you're growing, you're on the knife edge. Like, when we formed as 2 guys in a garage, we said 8 people. We'll never go over 8 people. And then we hit 12, and we said, okay, we'll never go over 15. And now we're 35, so I've stopped saying a number. But, like, every time you grow, you're realising, like, oh, my God, like, you remember this thing we used to do that we found really funny? Like, how inappropriate is that now? Like, you couldn't do that now. And It's not because we're scared of getting in trouble. We're just like, oh, my God, like, we were immature, like, in our mid and late 20s, like... And so there's so many places as you're growing, because you're growing through failure as well, right? So you're having these successes, you're getting more money, and that allows you to bring in more people. But what's forcing you to grow as a businessman? What's forcing you to grow as a studio head there? Well, it's the mistakes you make, right? So you're running this balance of, like, the better you're doing, you're exponentially seeing this growth in your team and the size of your projects. But the less stuff that's going wrong, the more chance it is that the mistake that happens next is going to be a bigger one. Because, you know, your team is going like this the whole time. Your team is growing, your team is getting more mature, working better together. But the less mistakes you're dealing with, the more you're almost idling. If you're not pushing yourself, you're not trying, you're not training, you're not learning. So, yeah, I think as studio leaders, you're always on a knife edge. You're always on the risk of making a mistake unless you're checking yourself, unless you're making sure you're growing. And I think a lot of companies are formed from 2 guys in a garage, right? You know, you look at Jagex, for instance, my first employer, that all came off the back of the Gower brothers. That was all off the back of RuneScape, was just a version of Andrew Gower's dissertation project at uni. And when I was there were 250 odd employees. They're like 300 and something now, right? But it was formed from a bunch of brothers working on a uni project. It wasn't a bunch of business people for making business decisions. So I think growth is the biggest risk for this stuff. And I think that if you don't mature, you don't bring in the right people to mature the business for you if you can't do it. If you don't bring in the right people to mature you, then what happens is before you know it, you're a 40-year-old, 25-year-old man running a business who suddenly thinks these things that are funny aren't funny anymore. Like, you know, and you have a bitter edge to the world and you start doing stupid mistakes. But there's no one to blame but you there. Like, we could see our shortcomings, and that's why we brought in people to fix those shortcomings. we could tell where the stuff we thought was really funny when we were, 20-somethings being incubated by Microsoft, we could tell we couldn't do that anymore. And I think if you don't have that self-realization and that check on yourself, you're always one mistake away. Crunch is something completely different, and the risk I have with crunch is my opinion on crunch is very different, I think. Like, I don't know what crunch means now. Like, being honest with you, I don't know what crunch means. Because, to me, crunch back in the day was repeatedly having to work a ridiculous amount of hours, working weekends, sleeping under my desk. And now I think it's not the same. So for me, working extra hours is what I do. I do that by choice. I get told a lot it's bad because you set a bad example, but I make sure my team don't, and I check on my team. But I choose to work because I like it, and I'm not going to stop doing it because it's my hobby as well. Like, I love making games and running a studio, so that is what I do with my spare time. But I think that the odd extra hours at night is quite normal every now and then. I think the odd extra long day sometimes is needed because it's how you sneak those ideas in that maybe were out of scope. What I think is bad is when you have the death march, when suddenly everyone's having to do 14-hour days, 6 or 7 days a week for 6 months. That's bad. That's what crunch is to me now. But I think as we grow, as we get new voices in the industry, I think there's just a different approach. And I think that people like me are at risk of becoming dinosaurs. I think, I used to look back at some of the old guards when I joined the industry and be like, oh my God, can you believe they think this? But I think I'm at risk of becoming a dinosaur myself if I'm not careful. So yeah, I think working your team to death is horrific. I think doing a death march is horrific. I think your team doing 12-hour days, working weekends is really bad. I think having to do the odd extra few hours here and there, I think is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I know I couldn't function on a 9 till 5 because I'll have lulls during the day, so I won't get a full day's work out of myself. But yeah, I hope that makes some sort of sense.
Yeah, sure, yeah. And maybe to follow up also with that, I think you mentioned it, that you think like realizing that you can't make these jokes you think in your 20s or something were still fun. I think a big part of it is, I guess, where maybe something of the issues come when we talk about, certain companies like Blizzard, where it's like they're all surrounded by these people. So who's going to tell them that these jokes aren't appropriate anymore? And I think maybe this is like part of the I guess, boys club mentality that people mention in these reports, that it's like if you're just surrounded by these people who grew up with those jokes, like when do they stop becoming funny if you never see a different perspective where they say, well, I guess these jokes are kind of hurtful to me, or like, I guess I don't find these any fun and any no longer or something.
And the boys club thing is so easy to do. Like, we're founded by the two of us who are friends, but we were really, the core of this company has always been 5 or 6 guys that were together, right? And
right, yeah.
When you start off, you are 100% of the company and you all have the same sense of humour. But now, those of us that are still here, and there is a few, we're not the whole company, we're not the majority, but we're the leadership of the company. So what example does it set? Like, but that's the thing, you shouldn't need someone else to come in and tell you they're offended. You shouldn't need to upset someone to realise what you're doing. You should be able to make that self-realisation yourself. You should be willing to take the time to question what you're doing all the time. Like, I'd like to think I don't have a 6-month period in my life where I've stayed the same. I like to think I'm always checking myself, even language stuff, little things like this. Like, I noticed I used the word, like, think too much. Like, so whenever I was actually saying a decision, I'd be saying think. And I didn't mean think, it was just, I think was a way of speaking. So I tried to work that out of my vocabulary so that I was clearer to my team.
Sure.
You've got to do that self-checking. And when it's stuff that could be offensive, right, first of all, you probably shouldn't be saying it in the first place. Simple as that, right? Like, if you're saying any joke to someone else, especially in a professional environment, but anywhere, that if someone overheard it, they'd be truly upset, there's no point in saying it. It's not like me telling you a rude joke makes our lives better. It doesn't. But it has the potential to make someone else's lives worse. And that's kind of what you should be thinking about. So yeah, I can see how the boys club thing happens. I've worked at boys clubs. Not been one of the club, but I've worked at boys clubs. I saw the risk with Dlala. We all did, of how you could turn into that. But there's no excuse for it. Like, you're grown adults. Check yourself. It's really as simple as that.
And I think maybe to follow up on the aspect of you like growing in size, like 35 people right now. I guess one of the big issues is from the book you mentioned from Ed Catmull is like the term feeding the beast, that you have a lot of costs that are related to that if people aren't able to develop anything. So for example, if you don't have another project going on, let's just say you finished the Mickey game, and same with Battletoads, I guess there always have to be a constant new pipeline of a new project coming along. And I guess if a project falls through and you don't have anything going on, then you lose a lot of money by just the sheer amount of people whose salary you have to pay every month. And they're basically just sitting around doing nothing, quote unquote, because they can't work on something properly. And I guess there's also a big risk that is involved with having a huge size of a team.
Completely. I mean, I had this conversation the other day that we cost more in 2 months than we did in a year in 2018. Like, that is insanity, right? It costs more to run the core of this studio, all the core costs, not contractors, all the core costs of this studio for 2 months is more than we cost for an entire year in 2018, right? So yeah, we are permanently feeding the beast. And the problem is, we do these awesome projects, but they're projects at the end of the day, and they have an end date, and they have a set budget. And even if we've got royalties, when we finish, a load of stuff has to happen before those games come out, right? So yeah, we jump project to project. I mean, we got Battletoads into certification, and we went gold in August. I think the team took 2 weeks off. I finished on the Friday. On the Monday, I started writing Mickey. So I took a weekend, and that was it. The team came back after 2 weeks, did a little bit of contract work, and then we were all on Mickey by October. So there was no downtime in between Battletoads and Mickey, right? We went straight into it. And that's how we've kind of lived. And any time that's not been the case, we've probably been panicking. Like, we've been looking at things going, oh my God, if we don't get any projects in by this date. And that becomes scary, because once you start pitching all the time like we do, the thing that becomes really apparent is, for deals the scope we need, if you pitch and it goes really well and they turn around in the room and go, yes, we want to make this game with you. Let's assume in this magical world that they do want to make the game, and it is going to happen. You're probably not going to get the game started for another 4 months at the quickest. I mean, I don't think I've ever closed a deal quicker than 7 months. But let's say we close the deal in 4 months. Then how long till your first milestone? Okay, a month, right? Because most publishers, they won't pay you for signing because they pay for work done, not work expected. So suddenly you have this timer of like, okay, well, let's say 6 months. Let's say 6 months, right, in this magical world. 6 months between me doing a pitch and getting the first check. And it's never that quick. Well, that means whatever your end date is, whatever the date in your budget where you hit 0 is, you've got to take 6 months off of it, because you haven't got 1 month till the end. When you get 1 month to the end, you've got -5, because you need to get money to come in. So it's always on your mind. Like, I mean, I think we signed this, and I think we started it in October, and by Christmas I was already pitching on potentially what would be next. Like, so there's just you just have to keep that coming in. You have to keep knowing what the next project is. Okay, we've grown for this project, and that's great, but now we cost this much more, which means we can't sign any projects that are less than this much. So yeah, you will always feed in the beast, always, and the beast just gets bigger.
And you also mentioned that, like, in Battletoads you had a lot of like reshuffling, and then right at the end. So I guess that's also, extra stress on like you were already pitching something else, but meanwhile the house was on fire basically, and you had to redo everything. So I guess this is an easy way of how the crunch finds a way in or something. And I guess I can sort of relate to the issues you're having there, because like as a small studio, there's only, I mean, now there are more people with you, but I mean it's just you in theory. It's just like like person that is pitching, and then there's also the supervising and stuff. So there's only so much you can do by the sheer amount of time you have. So I guess it's can be very tricky and scary.
Definitely, and you only live by your reputation and how good your last project was, right? So if I have to be pitching, that doesn't mean I can do less time directing the project. It means I have to do more hours, because I have to make sure I'm given a full work week minimum to making sure this project is where it needs to be. And it's always more than that, but at least a full work week. So if I need to be doing pitching or anything like that, it's just extra hours on top of that. It isn't take away this, it's add this to the end of it.
There's something I read that sort of like before you were able to get the great Disney deal. I know we have been very friendly, but I saw that there was an original IP you worked on, and it's called a comic point-and-click adventure. I think it's called the project called like Nothing to Fear, I think.
Yes.
And it was a point-and-click adventure. So AJ, I mean, there was like it sounds like it was like about restoring the reputation of the boogeyman.
Yes.
So AJ, I just need to tell you this. How dare you? We need more point-and-click adventures.
I know.
Ron Gilbert is only blessing us so often. AJ, come back. I know Disney pays the big dollars, but I mean, a point-and-click adventure for me, just for me, I will pay you 24. I recently paid 24 for Monkey Island. I will at least give you 25. This will be enough for Hugo for maybe a couple of days of food. AJ, what happened? I mean, come on. The point-and-click adventure. I know it's dead.
Point and clicks are the reason I make games. Day of the Tentacle is my all-time favourite game. I've got the Monkey Island giant box set right over there from the Monkey Island collection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Nothing to Fear. We absolutely adore Nothing to Fear. We actually got really close. So we actually have like an hour and a half of that game playable and polished. And we nearly released it a couple of Halloweens ago. We were going to just give that demo out for free. And something came up that stopped us. But yeah, like, we were really, really close to signing that. And we got offered Battletoads. And obviously you can't turn down Battletoads. So yeah, I don't think, like, Nothing to Fear is definitely not dead. I think Nothing to Fear is laying in wait. Mush and the Boogeyman are laying in wait for us to kind of bring them back. So I think never say never on that one.
Okay. It is a tough sell. I know we have been talking about the difficulty of running a studio, but I think 35 people can make a pretty good point-and-click adventure. And it was so easy for Double Fine. Like, what could go wrong?
No problem.
What could go wrong?
Whatsoever.
The documentary was just smooth sailing all along. It was so easy. Everyone was having a good time.
Why doesn't everyone just start a studio and make a point and click? Like, why doesn't everyone just start a studio and make a point and click?
Exactly. And so maybe after you close the deal with Disney on the new game, so like, I know you're a big fan of the album The Disney Goes Classical, so we're already immediately putting on a nice track of that after you signed it and we're like dancing around, if so, what kind of track was it on that album?
Oh my god! I mean, that whole album is absolutely world class. I mean, have you actually listened to it? It is.
I actually haven't. But I saw you talk about the When She Loved Me from Toy Story 2, and I'm not quite sure if I would be emotionally ready for that. Hearing it a good rendition.
It's incredible, like, because obviously some of them have actually some vocals in, but most of them they weave the vocal lines in with instrumentation. But
right, yeah.
When me and Dave, the composer, was trying to figure out, like, what do we want the score to sound like for Illusion Island? Because if you think of Mickey, it's traditionally really built on the Silly Symphony stuff, right? It's all the very Foley stuff, or in the new shorts, it's kind of mixed from around the world. But we were like, what would a big, epic Disney classical score sound like? And literally while we were thinking about it, that album came out, and we were like,
oh, okay.
Wow, like, this is what you could do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, Let It Go is brilliant on there. Whole New World. Like, all the tracks are absolutely fantastic on that album. But yeah, it's just a beautiful album. And it was just, the timing of it was perfect. The timing of it was almost like, me and Dave were kind of like, oh, this is the way we go. Like, the sound of Monoff, the soundtrack to Monoff should be this big, live, orchestral sounding soundtrack. So it just almost gave us that reaffirmation we needed.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think I teased it before Illusion Island. There was a time where you were already working on I guess it sounded quite similar. I'm not quite sure. It was a little bit different here and there, but some segments sounded very similar. That you already had a deal with Disney going on, and there's a great gamesindustry.biz article about with the title like How Dlala Survived the Loss of a $3 million Disney deal. Like, how does it, like, I mean, yeah, like we were talking about like all the dangers and the importance of a pitch and the next project already there. So like maybe you can talk me a little bit through like what it was like when this like deal didn't come through, and like how, like, I guess in the end it was like a sort of a nice, well, I guess we could, you could have left out the beginning part, but I mean in the end it came full circle and it actually seems to be happening. Like it is a Disney game coming out from you. And so like what was it like during this time? And I guess there were like salary cuts, and like there were sort of like, I mean, salary cuts on your side. Like what was it like during this time? And I think like it sounded like a really difficult time for you and the studio itself.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the only person that's ever took a pay cut at this company is me. So we made no layoffs, we made no salary staff cuts, none of that happened when the project went under. The team come first. Every day of the week, the team come first. Goes team, project, then the rest of us can follow, right? So it was heartbreaking. We loved that project. In hindsight, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to us, because it forced us to change how we approached things. We probably never would have got Battletoads. We definitely wouldn't be making Illusion Island, and Illusion Island is 100 times the game we were making back then. Mm-hmm. We signed that first deal when we were in the garage. We were literally 5 guys in the garage, about to leave the garages, but we were 5 guys in the garage. And Disney trusted us with this beloved IP, and we were having a great time. We were making it with friends, but we weren't truly ready, and we couldn't see that then. But we weren't truly ready for that responsibility. So yeah, like, you know, it was like a cliche TV show. We used to have a giant Micky Mouse painted on the wall with one of Walt's phrases on it. We had Disney toys everywhere, and we had this moment where like the project got cancelled and we painted over Mickey and we boxed up our Disney toys because it just hurt. It wasn't like anger or bitterness. It just hurt that it'd gone, and there was no one to be angry at because Disney handled everything so well, and you can't argue with a strategic level choice at $1 billion company, right? It wasn't personal. They didn't just cancel our game. They were changing their business. And we had no one on our side to be angry at. We hadn't made mistakes that had got the game cancelled. We'd been doing a good job. But so all you're kind of left with is heartbreak. And yeah, like, the most emotional part for me was like, I kind of felt it was coming. Like something was telling me that something was going to come down the line. And then we got told on March 30th. So, it was March 30th. So it was the day before April Fool's. I had to go in and tell the team. And I was always grateful, because if it had been a day later, could you imagine telling the team on April Fool's Day? Yeah. So it was horrific. I hadn't slept. We went in the morning. We got all the team together, and we were still a little team at this point. And we just said, look, it's done. Like, Mickey's gone. We're not getting to work on the project anymore. We have to stop what we're doing. And, I was pretty upset, as you can imagine. And I said, like, look, I think it was a Wednesday or a Thursday. I said, look, just take the weekend. I said, you can all go home now, mourn the loss of the project. We'll come back together next week and figure it out. And the team turned around and was like, can we start game jamming now? And they were gutted, but they all just instantly came together, and none of them went home. No one wanted to go home. They just wanted to start making the next thing. So literally that same morning, within 15 minutes of me finishing, Dlala were making games together, generating ideas. They all just wanted to make stuff. And that broke me. Like, that was... my heart was broken, and it was like filling this broken glass with just gallons of love, because the team were just incredible. Like, they handled it better than I did. There was no concerns. Everyone made sure everyone else was all right. And so we kind of knew everything would be okay. Like, we'd figure it out. But yeah, it was a big loss for us. It'd been over like a year and a half of our lives that were just kind of gone at that point.
And it's crazy. Like, I mean, like you mentioned it yourself. Even though it sounded like, I mean, on paper, it sounds like insane, to be honest. Like, and you're like, oh, it's just, just a $3 million loss in a deal. And, but I mean, it sounds crazy, but I mean, you never know that. And this might have been still the best thing for everyone involved. And now you're going to work on Illusion Island, which sounds like looks very, very promising and very great and stuff. And maybe even that, it had to have happened to, in the end, deliver the better project in the end. And it's like, yeah, you never know. And I guess that then this is one of the lessons that, like, even though some things sound like the worst thing in the world, and I think this is like the worst outcome could have happened, there might be a sort of reason for that, and in the end, it will all be good in the end. Doesn't, of course, guarantee that, but I mean, you never know. Like, it's
100%. Like, everything we do leads us to where we are now, right?
Yeah.
Our failures are what build us up, and like, that game would not have been anywhere near as good as what we're going to release with this game. And that's not me like bigging up this game or slagging off the other game. It is just a sheer truth, because we are now near, like, it's been, 6 years since that game was cancelled. You know, we're a bigger team, we're a better team, we know how to make the games, we went through Battletoads. We had none of that when we were making, like, that was our first big, real end-to-end project. That was going to be the first project that Dlala made that took over a year. Like, we'd never worked on something that was over a year. So, I hated the heartbreak. I hated having to break it to the team. But I'm so glad it happened. I'm so glad it happened. Because it's, you know, we might not have had Battletoads. We wouldn't have had Illusion Island. And we probably would have released a worse game. And how would that have benefited us? Like, would I have even been here sitting talking to you now? I can't even guarantee that, right?
I mean, it could have killed the company. You never know.
It could have, 100%. 100%, it could have.
Yeah, so I guess it all turned out to be great, I guess, in the end. And it's like I said, it's crazy to think that there's like this catastrophic news of like losing a $3 million deal somehow, I guess, was still needed maybe for you and the team. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, so like I said, we was talking about like Illusion Island and how is everything shaping up to be. Like, what were like the sort of like the co-op design decisions when you were talking with like Battletoads and like things? What were you like in your head? Were like, for example, because there was It Takes Two that came out last year, I think.
Yes.
And actually, my personal game of the year was a great co-op experience. And I think even though there was online co-op, it really was a couch co-op game, because this is like one of the games you want to have a partner next to you and enjoy them. I mean, did you play it?
Yeah, my game of the year too. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So what are like the things when you think about couch co-op, are like the sort of like the golden rules that have to be in place for guaranteeing fun? Because, well, it sounds easy. It's like, it's just like, you know, you play cooperatively. But I think a game like It Takes Two shows like how it's done properly. I'm just like constantly blown away by the creativity and by the stuff. And I mean, you guys and your team did the similar stuff with all the different gameplay mechanics and stuff, and constantly changing things up. And even like sort of to a point where the mini games could have been their own games by their complexity and by the amount of fun they are actually to play. So what are like your golden standard, like the gold standard rules for good co-op experience?
Yeah, I mean, we like cheesy phrases, right? So, I mean, Battletoads, it was teamwork makes the dream work, which is stupid. And on Micky internally, it's been awesome alone, better together. And that is, we want to make something that if you're playing it solo, you have this wonderful time, but that you feel like you're getting something extra by playing with friends. And that doesn't even necessarily mean doing the It Takes Two approach, right? Which is, the whole game is just co-op. It is these big set pieces. It's also, and what they did really well, it's about the micro level stuff. Like, for us, you know, we have mechanics that you can only access in multiplayer. So we have little things like, if me and you were playing and I was doing really badly, you might platform up to the top of an area and you could drop me a rope. And then I could just climb the rope, right? And you can do that anywhere, basically, in our game. You can just drop a rope for your friends and they can climb up it. So one of you has to complete the challenge, but not all of you if you're struggling. Or we've also got this hugging mechanic where you can ask for a hug, and if another character gives you a hug, you get a temporary bit of health, an extra temporary bit of health.
Can you hug the dog? Like, I mean, Goofy is a dog. I mean, I can hug the dog, right? I mean,
you can hug the dog. I mean, Goofington is a dog, so
I will actually pay close attention to the Twitter,
yes,
to the Twitter handle. Can you pet the dog? So
yes,
hopefully you will be able to see.
I'm hoping it counts. I'm hoping it counts.
He's a dog.
He is, right. But yeah, so there's those kind of experiences, and just like.
Right.
Giving the players space to make their own stuff. So, like, you don't have to make a game competitive for competition to arise. So just thinking about the dynamics of, like, hey, you know, when I play it on my own, I always do this. But actually, if we were playing together, I'd probably want to go get that first because I want to beat you to it. And, like...
Right, yeah.
So it's really just making sure that like we have that in mind from day one. Like that was one of the very first things we said to the team: awesome alone, better together, and we view everything through that lens. And I think that's just really, really important. And we kind of do this with all our projects. We set like core pillars. We tell the team that on day one, and then we make sure that everything we do filters through those pillars.
And maybe, like one final question before we close it off. I think you were avoiding looking at the scores for Battletoads and reviews coming in. So like, has something changed? Are you now able, like with Illusion Island coming out? Will there be one of the will it be again like this where you can't look at the scores and you will just read through it, or are you now sort of like hardened enough, or I guess wised up enough, or tough enough, or whatever it is in the end that you're like, okay, give it to me. I will go day one there. I will look at all the scores and then I will.
So what happened with me on Battletoads was I could see the number, but I couldn't read the reviews. Like I couldn't face reading reviews unless one of my best friends said to me, "You need to read this one." So I probably only read a handful.
Okay.
I don't think I'm any better now. I still won't be reading YouTube comments. I read all the Twitter posts because I'm the one that runs the Twitter, so I reply. Right. But, I don't know if I'll be able to read the reviews. Even the good, the problem I have is that I love the good stuff for the team, but don't necessarily like the good stuff for me. And I take the hard stuff really oh my God, I've let everyone down. So, I don't think there's any we had I think we had a 5 out of 5, a 100% review by VGC for Battletoads. I didn't even read all that. I didn't even read on that because I was just worried that something in there would be like, oh, yeah, we love this game, we're giving it 5 out of 5. There was this one thing, and then I would have been like, no, it's my fault. So, yeah, I don't think I'm any harder. I don't know if I ever will be.
Okay.
But what we do have is we make a Slack channel, and any positive reviews, we put the links in there, and that way we say to the team members, hey, you don't need to look on the internet if you're worried about reading bad stuff. Just this channel is for good stuff only. And I say it's for the team, but it's probably for me more than anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Yeah. And I think that's it. Time flew by talking about a bunch of stuff. I have a bunch of questions left, but I think the conversation was so great. There's always more to talk about, and I have one final segment. But yeah, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
And maybe before we go to the Twitter handles and the social media stuff, we have a recurring segment here that is I called it just lessons learned because it's just lessons learned. And maybe I will just name a few projects you worked on, and then maybe you can just give a short sentence or maybe even a word or something that was sort of the lesson learned on that. So yeah, maybe we start with I guess the Windows 8 launch title, Janksy.
Yeah, lesson learned on that is don't sign up for a platform that's coming out in 8 weeks. So get all the details before you sign the contract. That was a lesson learned for that one.
Yeah. And what about the ambitious but I guess unsuccessful, quote unquote, here? That's where I copied it from. Overruled.
Yes, Overruled. That is still some of my favourite design we've ever done. So the lessons learned from Overruled were we need work smarter, not as many hours, and scope appropriately for your budget. If you've got no money, try and make a game that costs no money to make.
And what about the still coming in the near future, Nothing to Fear? Wink.
So the biggest lesson on that is it's really hard to sell a point-and-click style game to publishers in the 2000s.
I am crying. My heart is crying. A bunch of my friends are also crying. We're all crying because I guess, a bunch of us grew up with those point-and-click adventures, and it's funny because Germany was still considered the great haven of new point-and-click adventures, and for a time we had the company Daedalic, which really hold up the flag and brought a bunch of real ones there, but even those are now making a Hobbit, a Gollum game. AJ, why?
Is it a Gollum point-and-click?
No, it's just a Gollum game. It's a third-person Gollum game. Imagine how many point-and-click adventures you could have made and not sold any.
I know, right?
Quite a few.
Look, I would have happily sold no copies if a publisher could have paid us to make it.
Right, yeah. I mean, yeah. I always hope for, like, this is also the reason I'm, like, every time there's a point-and-click adventure, like, for example, the new Monkey Island, I'm always like, I will buy the game once. If a premium edition comes out, I will buy that one again. Like, I would give you all the money just in case this will make the difference.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that.
This is just me, being my pathetic self. And how about Battletoads?
Yeah, be better, scope better, think about the long picture. So don't just think about short and mid-term, think about the long goal. And yeah, do that early. Make the hard decisions early.
And then I guess, I know the game is not out yet, but yeah, I guess there were already a couple of lessons learned there. So what about Illusion Island?
Yeah, so I think the big things here are just don't be scared to go smaller than you think. Listen to everyone, keep everyone's opinions, but don't be scared to make decisions. And yeah, easily to say for this one, but just following your passion works. Like, if you love something enough and you get a chance to do it, then that love and passion will carry you along the way.
That's awesome, yeah. And what words to close off the show? And no snoring anymore. I heard a couple of
I mean, he's been snoring away the whole time, the little beast.
Yeah. And Ajay, where can people find you? And what is I guess there's nothing new to announce from the side of Dlala, but I mean, where can people find the great stuff you and the people at Dlala are releasing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you've got a Nintendo Switch, you can go wishlist Disney Illusion Island now on the Switch store. If you want to catch up with Dlala, you can go on twitter.com/Dlala Studios. And if you want to hear just random ramblings from me with the odd recommendation, I'm Dnost, DNOST on Twitter.
Yeah, I guess the same goes for me. If you want to hear any ramblings about, I guess, like a couple of pokey snack reviews or some wrong movie opinions or sometimes even game opinions or me just being positive about, some games I just love or just my love for Monkey Island. And you can follow me on Twitter or at Dorian Chow. It's also on Instagram. And yeah, if you want to follow the podcast for upcoming releases, always it's easiest to follow us on the good old, I guess, Spotify, iTunes, and whatever service you're using. And also, you can follow us on Twitter at Yumi Industry. Same for Instagram, where I usually post a picture of the guest and maybe some, I guess, behind the scenes information, some pictures I took or something. There was always something new coming out there. Thank you so much, AJ. Like I said, it was great and a big pleasure talking to you. Looking forward to the co-op game. I know they're very rare and these days, but they can still win Game of the Year. No problems there. I mean,
no pressure.
Yeah, sure. I mean, no pressure. I mean, there's. I guess this is a tough year this year because I guess a lot of developers already saw Elden Ring coming and they moved everything to 2023. But you never know. I mean, that could be. Elden Ring doesn't feature a great co-op. It's very, very cumbersome, to be honest. And also, I don't think there are any dogs with pants in there. So
I imagine there's a very small crossover between hardcore Elden Ring players and hardcore Micky Mouse fans. But I mean, I say that, but there is a bunch of people on my team that love both. So maybe I'm wrong.
And I guess also the theme of dread when it comes to sort of starting with how the whole Disney journey started, I guess is now relatable when talking about Elden Ring. There's a sort of dread theme there too. And yeah, hopefully you will tune in next episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. And yeah, listen to you, see you, hear you in the next episode, I guess. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.